How does one go and raise $326 million?
Just focus on growth, not on tech, not on fancy website. Just have a good product and execute well. Choco was never an idea to a business. Like, Choco is here to solve a problem.
Would you mind elaborating on how you actually discovered the problem?
We produce double as much food as we need. With nearly 50% waste, we produce double as much food as we need, which means we could produce half and then also have half the emissions. And
Dan, thank you so much for hopping on the show with me. Very excited and eager to chat about your journey up until now and also about what your plans are for the future.
Pleasure to meet you, Lobo. Thank you very much for having me.
I wanted to start right away to ask you, how does one go from German Air Force and joins one of the biggest startup ecosystems in Europe? How do you make the switch to go from military to an organization like Rocket Internet?
It's a very interesting question. Never thought about it that way, but I think ultimately when I came out of school, out of high school, and was presented with the opportunity to go to the Air Force, it was just for 1 year, which was kind of the minimum. And at that point, I just thought, hey, I just came out of high school, and I might as well take, a 1 year paid adventure holiday. And it was, of course, then, much harder than anticipated. But in retrospective, I think, you learn so much just about organization and about leadership and about discipline. And I think it was a very enriching experience. But even before that, the plan was, at some point to start, our own company. And that was kind of just a step in between. And kind of the go forward to Rocket was just, hey, like, what could be the best place to learn on how to start and scale a company? And I believe at that point, outside US and China, probably it was the best place. And so that's why I then went to Rocket.
Was it, do you think it was some of the best time to actually join? Because there were a lot of different projects and companies that came out of Rocket Internet. And to me, as a tech person, it was the golden era of building out these new startups and concepts. And well, it's not called Rocket Internet randomly, right? It was going like a rocket ship.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing time. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I mean, Rocket was always particular about its culture, but it was super fast. It was super pragmatic. It was ruthless. And, seeing just a company from say 300-400 people go to over 30,000 people in a matter of, 4 or 5 years, starting. I mean, Rocket Internet was a company that started companies. And we started companies all around the globe, right? When you look at Latin America, some of the largest e-commerce that you have there are from Rocket. I believe, with Jumia, either the first or the largest tech IPO ever out of Africa is a Rocket Internet company. Southeast Asia, Lazada, I believe we sold it less than 2 years, $1.5 billion to Alibaba. And these are hard problems to solve, right? Because so that was the e-commerce time, right? 2014, 15. And so everyone just wanted to sell, fashion online, general merchandise, furniture online. And in Europe, that's quite simple because you just plug into DHL and they send everything for you. But if you want to do that in Indonesia, with all 15,000 islands, there's no DHL you plug into. So when we started that, you need to build your own logistical infrastructure. You need to rent the boat, get the scooter, to pick up the laptop from Singapore, flight, to Jakarta, get it on a truck, put it on a ship to an island, deliver it. And so in South Africa, pretty much the same. So just the pragmatism for that, I believe it's been a great school. Yeah, and indeed, like it has been a great time. Then the time also ended, but I think it's been a lot of fun.
What were some of the lessons learned for you from that time that you took and you now apply in your leadership in building your own company? Because like to me as a person seeing it from the outside, it was at the time a huge inspiration in terms of really rapid growth and I would say going aggressively at the market when there is an opportunity.
Yeah, so I think the pragmatism and the speed is really a big learning, because in the end of the day, when it comes to speed, the problem is not that some companies or some people cannot be fast. It's literally like you need to have seen it once. You need to have the mindset of pushing yourself and asking yourself, how much faster can we do it? And I think it was a good learning there. And I think when it comes to leadership or more to principles that we took to Choco, I think, like at Choco, with three goals. And one of these goals is that we want to be a school, that young people can come to, be educated, and hopefully learn skills, to start their own companies one day. And that pretty much came from Rocket. I think Rocket didn't really intend to be a school, but it has really created the ecosystem and in many parts of Europe and Latin America and Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa. And just because they brought this pragmatism, the speed, also the know-how, and they just got thousands of young, ambitious, motivated, smart people, and just gave them the tools. And I think that spirit of being a school, that's something I think we took with us for sure.
And do you have a sense of why that kind of momentum that was there, to me, it seems like it faded away at one point?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think it's probably three things. I think first, in fact, it was probably culture. I mean, while Rocket was, ambitious, aggressive, and fairly successful at times, it was really a culture of mistrust. Like, you didn't trust anyone or anything, and people didn't stay long. I think also people were not trusted enough. I mean, when you look at the founders that we hired, they just didn't have enough skin in the game. They just didn't have enough an equity holding in the companies which they started for Rocket. And so I think people just think too short term. Yeah, so too little trust, thinking too short term. And I think hence many companies just didn't scale very far. So I think it was one. I think two, it's literally the inherent business models. I mean, the beginning of the 2010s were golden times for e-commerce, for selling physical stuff online and shipping it. But at some point, that has been over, right? It's like the big e-commerce companies and all of the major consumer verticals, online fashion, online food, online furniture, general merchandise, like they had been built. And I think Rocket had a hard time moving on from there. Then maybe there came a second wave, like, delivery and food delivery and that stuff. But then it kind of was tricky for Rocket to invest in more kind of product-led, tech-led business models. And that's probably the third thing. I think while Rocket was very strong on operations, on sales and scaling, expansion, execution, it never had that strong of a muscle on the product side, on the tech side. And so I believe at that point. And then maybe lastly, the fourth point, was just at some point was defocus. I mean, 150 different companies, in 150 different countries.
It's quite a bit.
Yeah, I sometimes believe if all of these efforts, of us, but more so also of the talent of the founders, if all of this would have been focused on one business, then I believe this would be a 100 billion plus company today, maybe more than that. But I think it was just too defocused in the end of the day.
You can only imagine the magnitude of that if everyone would be focused in one direction.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the short-term focus, short-term thinking. How do you think about the current state of things of what you are doing in the long run? How do you instill the long-term thinking in your operation, so you don't get carried away with the stuff that is happening here and now?
So for us, for example, at Choco, we always say, look, like Choco was never an idea to a business. Like Choco is here to solve a problem, and then we can speak about the problem. But and so like we are here to solve that problem. And I think when you have that problem mindset versus like, hey, I want to build an online store for X, then you can think very long term. Okay, what are really the steps to solve that problem thoroughly, globally, in all of its complexity? And it's kind of an open horizon, and you can be like and you should be very stubborn on that vision. And where you remain flexible is really how to get there, and how you build it, and new technologies emerge, new ways of doing emerge, and you can be flexible. But I think if you just have an idea and you want to execute an idea, then you're kind of limited to that, and I think it draws you into short-term decision making. I think that's one. And two is also, what do you want as a founder? In the end of the day, it's I think it's legitimate if people say I want to build a company and then hopefully sell it for 100, 200, 800 million bucks. But if that is your intention, then from the first place, then likely your company won't become big. But if your intention is, hey, I want to build a generational company, like I don't mind the exit. It's not something that drives me. What drives me is like solving a problem. I think then automatically you become more long term, and then you tell this to your team, and then they become more long term thinking as well, and then they make more long term decisions. And these are probably two of the ways.
Yeah, from my side, I would say that it's very hard to revolve a vision around we want to build a business and sell it for X amount of dollars, right? And you put it very nicely that if you are solving a problem, then there's a deeper purpose behind it. Would you mind elaborating on how you actually discovered the problem and where you found the passion?
For us was kind of methodical, because we said, okay, look, what are likely the largest problems that we have on the planet? And then, there's only so many. So, there's obviously equality, there's education, maybe healthcare, and there's climate change. And then we kind of looked at all of them, and we took a lot of time. So at that point, we had quit our jobs at Rocket. So we really full time, we're just looking at problems, and for over a year, for over 14 months. And then, at some point we looked at the climate change, and then you ask yourself, okay, where's climate change coming from? It comes from, carbon dioxide gases, greenhouse gases. And then where do they come from? And then you say, look, the largest emitter of CO2 gases is electricity production. And the second is, the food system. So electricity production around 25%, so 1/4. Food system also around 1/4. And so food system essentially means anything from growing food to transporting food, then cooling food, eating food, and so on. And this was the year 2017. And so, but all of the headspace, all of the attention goes to electrification, or went to the electrification of cars, of course, because a fast car, accelerating fast, to a high velocity. It's like a cool product to speak about. But even if we were, to get rid of the emission of all cars, it's just a low leverage. It's like we focus on the wrong things. And so I said, okay, look, electricity is interesting, food system is interesting, and then we look deeper into them. And there's something that is particularly interesting about food, is that we produce double as much food as we need. With nearly 50% waste, we produce double as much food as we need, which means we could produce half and then also have half the emissions. And I'm not speaking about, crazy innovation here in terms of, nuclear fusion or electrification or whatever. I was just speaking about, just don't have waste. And so we found that interesting. And then you kind of go deeper into the problem, and then you realize, the largest driver of deforestation. So why do we burn the Amazon rainforest and, then Indonesian rainforest and so on and so forth, is because, we want to create space for fields to grow food. which we end up throwing away half of it. And so the largest driver of extinction of animal species is habitat loss, which is driven by deforestation, and you can really go on and on and on. And so it's a really interesting problem. And then you look into, okay, like what's the scale of it? And then you realize, okay, so the food system is, the single largest employer on the planet. And nearly 1 billion people, and alone 540 million people on the planet, work in farming. And then you ask yourself, okay, so where are those farmers? Okay, a majority of them is in emerging economies of the planet, and actually the majority of farmers in these places are women. And so, someone has to pay the bill when you pay 50%, when you produce double as much, and you got to throw away 50%. And so, when you grow up in one of these places and your family asks, to work on a farm, which you got to do, then, two things are true. First, you probably won't have time for any education, nor you can afford it, right? And education usually is the way to equality. And second, you likely live below the poverty line. And so we just found, more and more reasons, like say, hey, like the food system is severely broken, and we haven't yet spoken about the loss of biodiversity, we haven't yet spoken about, soil degradation, because we grow in monocultures. And so we thought it's a very interesting problem, a very important problem, but also a very complex one, because when you think about it, what does this food system do? Is we grow food in every single country on the planet, and then we ship it to any single country on the planet, forever, from everywhere to everywhere, non-stop, without a plan, without any regulation, and so obviously, and without any technology, and without stop, really. And so obviously that system is made to be flawed and to be very inefficient, and just that inefficiency expresses itself in waste. And so we thought, it's also like a complex challenge. It's a large one. It's something that we believe is worth it investing 20 years of your life into. And that's kind of how we started. And then all of our research was just on food supply chain.
Well, thank you so much for walking through the problem with me. I have no doubt that this is a problem worth tackling, and I can totally see that you can put a great vision behind that, and there's a lot of passion. It's a great cause after all. So what I would love to learn is how you are actually tackling the problem, right? There is a huge overproduction. We are not able to fully use all the food that we produce, and I would love to understand what sort of tools and strategies and products you are putting in place to help minimize that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we speak about it very pragmatically, let's take an example. Okay, so you're in Prague right now, I'm in Berlin, but even if we were like in New York or in SF or Shanghai or Paris, you could go to the supermarket and you could buy mangoes there, or you can go to a restaurant and that would have a mango topping on your poke bowl. And so where does the mango come from? And so let's just take an example and say Brazil, maybe the south of Brazil, and then mango is like a large tree and it's hanging there. And then the farmer, let's say harvest like 100 mangoes, and then there's going to be a harvest manager, right? And harvest manager is going to say you harvest Monday and you Tuesday and you Wednesday and you Thursday. So we don't all harvest at the same time, obviously. And so to this harvest manager, of the 100 mangoes, that we have, we might sell 90. And it's not so much of a big problem, right? Because we take 5 home, we eat it with the family, 5 go to trash. It's not so much. And the harvest manager buys 90. Then they maybe sell 80 to the exporter who's somewhere at the port in Brazil. Who the same thing, take 5 home to family, put 5 to trash, who sells, 70 to the importer in Rotterdam, who sells 60 to the distributor, and then 50 arrive.
As you are talking about this, I'm getting scared, that by the end there is going to be a lot of mangoes in the trash.
Yeah, and so that is very important to the solution, right? Because if you really want to, it's a systemic problem. It's not like you go to one player, to the restaurant or to the distributor or to the farmer, and you create a product for them and then food waste is solved. No, it's a systemic problem. So the first way and how you got to think about the solution is you will have to touch several parts of the supply chain if you really want to solve it. And so for us, we thought, how we're solving it is that, hey, we know we have to go into all of these different parts. So where to start? And then our market, on any market really where you have oversupply, right? We have oversupply because we throw away half of it, so we have too much of the product, and everything is commoditized. Because I don't know if you remember of the brand of the last broccoli you bought. So you don't mind. So it's a buyer's market, commoditized and overproduction. So, compared to an Apple product, people are camping in front of the store for 2 days when your iPhone ships. They would never go to the other side of the street where there's a Samsung store where they can also buy a good phone, right? But for broccoli, one supermarket does have, you go to the other.
Yeah.
And
I usually don't look at the brand of or at the supplier of the broccoli. I mean, probably you don't call it brand of a broccoli, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't exist. And but what it means, the power is really with the buyer, with the end of the chain, because they can choose who they buy from. They own all the power. And the end of the chain, there's really three ends of the supply chain. It can get food either, at a restaurant, at a hotel, first, second, at a supermarket, so at a retailer, and third, at a group caterer. So when you go to a school canteen, a prison canteen, and stuff like those are really the only three ends of the supply chain. And so we realized that, and I said the first product that we have to build is for those people, so these kind of businesses, and then because a very, very broad group of users, you have to obviously choose for the beginning a very, very narrow user for the beginning. So 6 years ago when we started Choco, we said, okay, let's start with individual restaurants and look how they purchase. And so then we started to develop an app that helps them do the purchasing decisions. And it's really hard to get the person who's buying food for a restaurant on an app, because it is usually the chef, the cook. And you can literally be the best chef on the planet and not use any app ever, right? And you can be world famous. And so that was a big challenge. And so what we did is we went from restaurant to restaurant, like my co-founder and me. We probably visited more than 50 restaurants every day, and we just had design screenshots, and we designed it back in of PowerPoint and our phone and said, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And so after a couple of weeks, nearly 50 iterations every day, we had a good product. And the goal was to get the chef purchasing on it, because we know once you would aggregate enough restaurants, enough chefs purchasing via our platform, then we would get the attention of one step deeper into the chain, of the distributors delivering to them. Because the buyer's market, like the supply, always follows the demand. So we're kind of aggregating that demand. And so what the product does in the end of the day, it will help the restaurant in its own operations to reduce waste. And it's very practical things. So I'll give you an example. First of all, what's your demand forecast? How much should you order in the first place? Second of all is how do you store your food? Is this in the right fridge? Should this be frozen? Should this be chilled? How should it be? Third is do you learn? So do you actually track your waste, so that next time if you should order less or more? And so that's some things that the product helps, for example, restaurants with. But then we connect them also to the supplier, and we do the same for the supplier. We tell them hey, you have that many products, and they have massive warehouses. Usually out of town, next to a highway, they have massive warehouses, and they have tons of food there. And we tell them, hey, look, you gotta 200 kilos of salmon, and that's going to be end of shelf life, in 3 days. So you might want to sell it off now, and you might now want to push, like an offer to all of the restaurants out there, and all of the restaurants on Choco, to buy it, before at a special discount, before it goes to waste. You might want to, we give them demand prediction tools, and so this, the very end of the supply chain. So the restaurants, the retailers already on the platform, and now the suppliers. For them, we already reduce waste significantly. But then the next steps is to go deeper and deeper until eventually you reach the beginning of the supply chain, which is the farmer level.
How difficult was it to actually convince the restaurants and restaurant owners and chefs to be interacting with a digital platform? Because I assume that they were used to doing it the old school way, and they had their processes and their ways of doing things, and it's probably not the most natural thing for them to pick up an app and start doing everything there.
Yeah, so it was hard indeed, but I think, in the beginning, you just have to speak to hundreds of users. And so we literally went from restaurant to restaurant. We said, hey, how do you order? And then most restaurants, they order by leaving a voicemail. And so, which means that, at like 11 p.m., kind of dinner shift is over, they clean the kitchen, they sit down and pull out a phone, and then they leave voicemails at the supplier, and they would say, hey, I'm Daniel, my client number is 123, and I need, 15 limes, and 20 pounds of carrots and 15 chicken breast. And then they hang up and they're like, did I just order the limes? Right? So it's kind of a crappy process. And then, for example, in like the UK, they have on average 15 different suppliers they call every night. So that's also going to take them an hour.
So 15 phone calls and 15 voicemails left, and someone has to like pick it up in the morning and process it?
Absolutely. Then on the other side, at 3 a.m. in the morning, when the distributor starts working, they listen 20 hours of voicemail and then they type things into their system. And we're not speaking of a small market, right? We're speaking about food. We're speaking about $7 trillion a year market that is run over voicemail.
It feels so bizarre to us digitally native thinking people, but I can totally see that working like that.
Yeah, and so then the question is, from a real product perspective, or rather product design perspective, is how do you solve that problem? And as you said, like the user is very offline, and so I believe, for a very offline user, you have to provide an interface that they already understand. So before someone downloads our app, the Choco app, they should already know how it's working. So how can we achieve that? We use interface that they already know. So our app for restaurants has become a chat. So it's a chat app, like WhatsApp, like Facebook Messenger. But, all of these different chats are not friends, but you're a different supplier. Your meat supplier, your fish supplier, your wine supplier, and so on and so forth. And the reason is not because, chat is like the greatest interface on the planet. The reason is because you know already how it works before you download it.
Yeah, everyone is familiar with it, right?
Exactly. Everyone's familiar with it. And I believe that's a good playbook to get like a very old school industry online. And then the chat, has a structured checkout component. Then it's like a chat and you can chat, but also it's like a basket, of a list, and take care of 5 carrots and 15 cucumbers and so on. But you combine it, and like this, you remove the friction, because when you go to a chef, say, here's my super nice, high, super modern, unique interface, and they're like, just like, no. But if you provide something that is familiar, that they understand, from the first time they look at it, oh, okay, that helps me. I think that is the way. And then, coming back to pragmatism, you just got to take the back door and walk into the kitchen and be shouted at, and just put out your phone and just, hold it, into their face, and then and let the app do its magic. So I think you also just, got to do the things that don't scale and be pushy in the beginning.
So you now describe this one piece of your ecosystem and how the restaurant owners and chefs can interact with it to basically put in their orders. But could you fast forward and just picture how it impacts the solving of the problem, and how you can leverage those inputs in the aftermath?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to the mango example, right? Someone produces 100 mangoes, and in the end, we eat 50. And the main problem is that the mangoes get pushed through the chain. Oh, I'm just going to grow 100 because I have space to grow 100. And then it gets pushed through. But ideally, it should be pulled through. So, for example, okay, in Paris, every second restaurant in Paris is using Choco. So we have a fair amount of data. of what kind of food is actually mined. We're speaking hundreds of tons, and millions of data points every day. So we have a fair amount of data, and we have 6 years of data by now. And so I can, with a fair, level of confidence, say how many mangoes are needed next year in March in Paris. And so we should turn it around from a push market to a pull market, where we say, hey, we need 50 mangoes. We're going to pay for those 50 mangoes. But please only grow those 50 mangoes. Maybe we need 55, because it's food, something always goes wrong. And so we have to essentially turn it around. And I think coming to a pull market, that's likely one of the principles of how end state should look like.
And when you mentioned that half of the restaurants in Paris use Choco, it's a very impressive footprint. But considering that you have managed to get that in how long? 6 years, something like that. How difficult was that to get such a large portion of the ecosystem on board the platform?
I think in the end of the day, we've always been pragmatic. We've have a high level of trust in the team. We hired many people. We work together today with many people that we worked together before at Rocket. Many of the people at Choco, we worked together for over 10 years. And when you have this level of trust in the team, it just allows you to expand very fast. And then you just got to stay committed. So Paris is one example, but Berlin, London, Brussels, New York, SF, Chicago, it's in many places, actually, sometimes higher than 50%, sometimes higher than every second restaurant. I think, in the beginning, when you do those things that don't scale and you go from restaurant to restaurant, then you just got to look, okay, what are the patterns that work that you want to replicate, right? So it works when I go through the back door, because I tried it literally 100 times and 80 times work when I go through the back door. It works when I don't pitch a lot, when I just, show someone the app, because I tried 100 times and it worked a couple of times. And you create a playbook out of it, and then out of the playbook, you create a process, and then you just hire, young and smart and hungry people, and we taught them these playbooks. And we got fairly consequent in it. So what we did in the beginning is what we call the generational model. So in the very beginning, we started in Berlin. We would hire 5, ambitious young people, and we would teach them that. And they would also teach us a lot of what they see in the streets, and we kind of create a playbook together. And then once they're ready, we sent them to 5 different cities. And then they hired each, 4 more people. And then we just look, okay, who are the best people at acquiring restaurants? And then, after 6 months, we looked, okay, what's the next generation? So the next best 5, they went to 5 more cities. And I hired again 5 people. And we and that continued, and that enabled us to go very fast, because usually when you expand, 2 things break. The first thing is, knowledge transfer, how you train someone that you hire, in San Francisco when your HQ is in Berlin. And second, culture transfer. And then you get a lot of friction to the company. But with this generational model, you have both guaranteed, really. And so that was probably the main reason why we could expand. Probably in the first 2 years, we went to the 50 largest cities in Europe and US with that model.
Well, you are tackling a massive problem. And in order to be able to do that successfully, you also need a lot of resources backing that. And you have managed to raise $326 million, if I'm not mistaken, which is an extremely massive number. How does one go and raise $326 million just like that? And I'm saying just like that, but it's a lot of money these days, and I'm pretty sure that it required a lot of effort to make it happen and establish such a big footprint.
Our approach has been in the beginning. So we've been the first round was 1.2 million, and it was super hard to raise that round, and we've been not good at it. We were lucky that someone who believed in us as persons did it, and after signing it out, he told us, "Yeah, your deck was absolute crap." And so from that moment on, we said, "Okay, we don't do a deck anymore. We just don't. No presentations. We suck at it." And we said, "Look, the easiest way to raise money," and I read this somewhere, and it said, easiest way to raise money is to make your company, do good. To make it do well, to have it grow. And so that was the only thing we focused on it super radically. And we've been in stealth for probably the first 3 years, which means we didn't have a website, no LinkedIn, no social media. All of the media that came out on us at that time was just because it leaked, not because we wanted it. And that just gave us a tremendous focus just on pure execution. And that was one. And two, when you're in stealth, something magical happens, is that people start to speak about you because it's like a secret, and they're like, "Okay, I know this company, but don't tell anyone." And so of course I tell everyone. And so it becomes this kind of this interesting dynamic where you get a lot of inbound. And then for us, we were literally never raising because we were always well capitalized, and we didn't have a deck. But I just told him the story that I told you right now. And then we told him our graph, and our graph went up and to the right. And I think that was really the way. And one thing I had learned was that, when you think of the VC market and VC startup market, then in the end of the day, money is commoditized, just like food. And the job of an investor is to invest, not to not invest. But your startup only exists once. Okay, so I think many people go and just asking VCs and please invest and please invest. No, I think it's very important to have a very respectful conversation on eye level, not arrogant, not at all. You need to stay humble, but like on eye level, and then you need to discuss, hey, like you as a person, because you want to get a particular partner, you're not looking so much for the money. Do you want to go on this journey with us together? It's kind of like getting married. Probably more than that, because you can't divorce. And I think this mindset kind of helped. But then again, just focus on growth, not on deck, not on fancy website. Just have a good product and execute well. I think that's where the focus should be.
No decks, I hear loud and clear.
Yeah.
Is there any parallel between you having an experience from German Air Force and you building a startup in a stealth mode?
Interesting. No, I don't think so.
Why did you think in the early days that starting in stealth was the right way to go about that? Because I see many entrepreneurs do these days, and I think it's good. But also, like, there is others that like to be building in public, which I think is the very opposite trend, right? You even share the stuff that you don't usually share. So what was your rationale for staying in stealth for about 3 years?
I think in the beginning was simply we didn't want to attract any competition. Also because we came from Rocket, and Rocket was notorious of copying other people's business models, right? And so we didn't want to attract any competition. That didn't work at all. Rocket copied us so much to the culture that Rocket copied us with 4 companies, not with one, with 4. They started one in Latin, one in Europe, one in Southeast Asia, one in Middle East. Direct copies of us. So they heard of us. So that didn't work. But then at some point, you stick to it because it becomes your culture. Imagine the kind of people that you attract, that apply to you, and you cannot tell them your company name, your plans, how much money you have. Like it's the weirdest experience as an applicant when you ask, in which countries do you operate? Sorry, I can't tell you. Who's your investors? Sorry, I can't tell you. Like, what's your long-term plan? Sorry, I can't tell you. Do you want to join? And but but what we can tell you is like we're going to work hard and we're ambitious. And so I think that it's a great selection process that was not intended, but then we learned after some time just to attract the right kind of people, in particular in the beginning. And so hence we stuck to it. But at some point we needed to go out. We were too big, and we needed also mostly for legitimacy for our users when they Google us and stuff. We needed to go out.
Yeah, I think I can totally see that it really attracts a special breed of people if you tell them nothing and they have to join to find it from the inside, right?
Yeah.
How do you think that your perception of tackling the problem of the overproduction is changing with the latest trends in the tech space, especially with AI? Because I feel like that's one of the points of your interest these days.
Yeah, so I think what's great about AI, in particular in a very offline industry like ours, is that people can interact with a machine the way they would interact with a person. And so essentially, they don't need to learn how to interact with a machine in the first place, and because they can speak to it naturally, either via written form, even via voice. And so they just don't need to learn how to use a complex software. They can just ask a question, how much sales did I do this week? And the machine is going to answer them. They don't need to click through many dashboards, for example. And so that's why I think particular AI is a great use case for offline industries. We have a new AI product, maybe we launched it officially. The general launch was in January. We've been building it for over a year. And it's one of these use cases because, back to the problem, why would a chef suddenly use an app to order? And we have to convince all of them. But on the other side, as a distributor, if the chef doesn't order with an app, then they're getting all of these voicemails. And by the way, if they order with an app, then, build the integration into the ERP system of the distributors, and the order just flows right into the ERP system. So no manual order entry required. But something else that you could do, and that's kind of our latest product, is that, we just go to a distributor and say, hey, we have the Choco AI, and the Choco AI, it's just going to listen to these voicemails for you. It's going to read your faxes, because fax is very important to them. It's going to read emails, if you receive email orders, SMS, WhatsApp, whatever it is. And the AI is going to understand, if Daniel is calling, and he says, I want potatoes. That what Daniel actually wants is the Yukon potatoes, the 2 kilogram net, and the one air freight from US. And so because the AI is going to take this unstructured information, learns from it, makes structured information, also parse into the ERP system. And so essentially install the AI, and within a day, all of the order information of the distributor becomes digital. It took them before years to get all of the customers on the app. And so the AI literally speeds you up for years. And now it becomes really interesting because you don't stop there, right? You say what is this information that we're learning? And suddenly you can provide to a very offline business like a distributor, you can provide them a self-populating CRM, that creates a new customer every time, so a new orders that adds the order history, that adds the order behavior, that predicts when a customer is happy, when a customer is unhappy, and so I think and there's many more use cases to come. We're going to launch another AI product this year. So I think that's really top of mind. I think just in general. Any company is not an AI company is going to be sooner or later obsolete. It's just you can create 100x the value in a fraction of the time for your user. Just a lot of value just comes out of the plug now, and there's very little interface that you have to build around it.
How did you go about attracting the right talent to be able to play in the AI game with Choco? Did you build up your own in-house team, or did you plug in some other partners for that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a large in-house team, and you know, I think in the end of the day, what's interesting about AI is, at least on the application layer, it's a fairly new thing, and we went very early on into it. Literally just have one engineer, someone who has been with us from the right beginning, and we say, look, let's try to create an MVP. And then you become serious about it, and you just tell people, that you approach when recruiting. Hey, like, you can build an AI product here. It's one of the first. We're serious about it. We believe it's going to be a major value add for our users. We believe it's going to be a major revenue driver for us. We even believe that we're going to be an AI company in a year from now, because it's going to be the only product that we have. And I think, the right kind of AI talent who just wants to see, like, their work, providing value to a user, it's just being useful to someone, they want to work in it. And so, now with like probably 20 people working on it, maybe more. But you just start with one, and I think ultimately engineers and, ML people, data scientists, they just want to create something useful, and you got to prove that.
As you are leading this initiative, is there something that you do for yourself to stay educated and stay up to the game with the latest trends? And it could be just, leveraging all the tools that are out there. I would just love to hear from someone who is in an executive role how you stay in touch with what are the possibilities of the technology, because I feel like many people might find this insight extremely valuable, because they are in positions that they would also like to bet on their future. And as you mentioned, right, if companies are not leveraging AI and implementing it in their operations, they will likely become obsolete in the future. So I would just love to understand how you are making sure that you have the right knowledge and you have the right insights, so you can lead the organization that way.
Yeah. I think curiosity is really important, and I think that's where it all starts. And I think learning is very important for everyone, but probably most for CEOs. And so I just read every newsletter that is out there, every AI newsletter. I listen to every podcast that is out there, and I think these are really powerful tools, because you can literally decide every single day, to spend 1 or 2 hours with some of the most brilliant minds in AI that you don't even know, but you can literally spend 2 hours with them when you read their blog and like listen to the podcast. And I think it's very powerful, at least from a theoretical perspective. But then I believe AI is also the opportunity, if not the obligation, of a founder or CEO to get way more hands-on and to be closer to product than ever before. I mean, we started literally the AI project at Choco with 2 people, and I was one of them. And then it became more, and today, probably every of our 100 or so engineers working with AI. But I think you just have to be close. I think other very practical things that we did 2 times an AI hackathon. We just take a whole week, and like 2 weeks a year is a lot. For an organization like ours. And we said, hey, just use the existing APIs that are out there. Use all of the things that you can do. We put all of our engineering, even all of our sales resources on it, and say, 2 times 1 week, just be curious and create a product. And this drove so much just curiosity in our organization, because in the beginning, people are a bit afraid. What is new technology? Is it going to stay? Is it just a mega trend? But then as soon as people say, hey, I can build, cool stuff with it, because you give them the time and the freedom, then kind of it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And when I look now on our Slack, with several channels of people, just put like the thoughts on AI, like the latest on AI, and you attract the right kind of talent with that. But I think ultimately it's just learn a lot, be curious.
What is it like to be able to make a decision that you take the whole company for 2 weeks in a year and you put them to basically work on something that where you don't know what's going to come out of it? Because to me, it feels like it's a major decision. I have no doubts that great things can come out of that, but it might be tough, right, for some people, especially when things are tied to directly generating revenue. How do you make such a big bet, and where do you find the courage to be able to make such a decision?
I think we're in the business of risk. I think it's very important to know that, and I think so we have to take risks. But I think on the other side, it's just there's a brand new technology, okay, and it's readily available, it's fairly cheap, it's consumer grade, and if you really believe in that technology, if we really believe in AI and that technology, then you just got to put your money where your mouth is, and you got to try it. And so in some ways it's just being consequent. Maybe that's also the how do you say, like the privilege of being a founder that can take this kind of risks and not being a hired kind of executive or something.
Yeah.
That's probably the role of the founder.
Right. You can call the shots, and
Yeah.
I think that if you feel like there is a potential somewhere, you should go after it. Of course, like
Yeah.
when you are taking the risks, they should be well hedged, and you can't be doing it all the time. So you probably don't want to make it the other way, that you would spend 50 weeks in a year doing
Yeah.
hackathons and 2 years of doing the work, because it would
Yeah.
not work. But in the end, if you look at the math, it still makes sense. But I find it very inspiring, especially with the magnitude of your organization, that you basically free up everybody and you focus on that. Because after all, I think it's one of the biggest trends in terms of tech that is out there, and you are fully tapping into the
Yeah.
potential.
And I think also like a lot of it also came from the team, because I think it's fairly motivating. Like good engineers, good data science people, ML people, good product managers, designers. Like they want to work with the latest technology. So it's almost like you just got to give them the room and allow that. It's like many of the things that we do in AI was not, probably all of it wasn't even my idea or something. I just sometimes say like, look, yeah, we believe in it. Like you want to take a week, take this week. And I think it's very motivating to the team. And I think probably those 2 weeks make them much more productive because they're much more happy in the other 50.
I feel it's part of the modern mindset also, that I think we need to make the work that we do interesting, and it's interesting when you are actually able to tap into those new technologies. And I think that it's not just about the new technologies, it's also like the work is more interesting when you have scale, right? When you have many people using your product, it becomes interesting, versus if you have no one using it, it can be boring. If you are able to leverage the newest, latest trends, newest tech, versus the legacy stuff that is outdated and clunky to work with. So I think that's the modern direction, or at least that's what I see as a modern direction of how do you make people motivated? How do you make them explore new ideas and invest a bit of themselves into coming up with new approaches, etc.?
Yeah, 100%. And it attracts top talent. And I mean, today, we have a dynamic where people come to me and they say, hey, I think we could build this that has a lot of user value. And, we just need like one or two resources on it to MVP it. And can we do it? And I think at some point, you just got to trust your people and just let them run. And
what do you think is the biggest challenge for Choco that you have ahead of yourself?
I think there's a couple. On the AI piece, I think with a product that creates a lot of user value, I think AI will also reshape a lot in how we work internally. we just reached like 100% daily adoption of Copilot and engineering. We in other part in sales functions, we're not yet enough AI enabled. I think more of our internal process can and have to be automated. Sometimes also user-facing processes. I think that's one kind of also bring it internal. I think another one for us is that when we look at the competitive side, we were lucky. We were in a super competitive market. We have probably 4 or 5 competitors in every single country that we operate in, but slowly over the years we became to be by far the largest player. But I believe future competition could come from maybe larger companies who might want to look into this space. I think that's one. That would be the second one.
It's also interesting that you are enforcing the use of AI across the whole organization, right? You talked about engineering, sales, and it seems like you are pushing it across all levels, not just building it within your product, but also making all the people within the organization more efficient. Are there any particular examples where you personally rely a lot on AI and how you leverage it?
Yeah, there's a couple. So I mean, these are very pragmatic things, right? But we do one thing, which is our weekly business review, in which we kind of go with all of our regional leaders through our metrics, our sales numbers and our achievements every year, and it's a fairly complex, KPI, sheet if you want so. And so I just created for myself, a custom GPT in which I would paste it and which is interpreted for me. Say like, look, these are the 10 questions you should ask, and it probably saves me like 1.5 hours a week. But probably the main advantage is that I've learned for myself on how to make something useful for myself in my job. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think that the more we embrace and the more we leverage AI in our daily lives, the better. I keep repeating myself a little bit, but I still feel that it's extremely hard for our generation to make this go-to when we want to tackle a problem. But I feel like the younger generations, for them, it's gonna be the same approach as we have to opening up like turning on a smartphone and interacting with the apps, because that device now is pretty much glued to our hands, right? And I think that it's going to be a lot easier for the future generations, because the AI tools are going to be the go-to for them to tackle challenges, and they will rely on it a lot more. But what we can do is just to instill that as a practice and do it more and more. And I think it's going to take a while, but we'll be able to get there as well.
It's very interesting times ahead of us. I think it's probably most interesting 10 years ahead of us. I mean, when we just looked at advancements, just since last January to today, of what is possible, how much better the models got, how much faster they got. Now everyone's speaking already about GPT-5, and NVIDIA has like this 30x faster chip, and like there's going to be insane things possible. And I think you just got to be curious and be at the forefront if you want to win.
Thank you so much for listening or watching to the very end. I hope that can only mean one thing, that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, please go ahead and follow us, subscribe, or write a review, and it will be tremendously appreciated by our side. In the meantime, there are a bunch of other episodes that you can check out. And I'll be looking forward to catching you next time.